First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me here. This is the second time in Levi, and each time when I'm here, I got new impressions, fresh ideas, and new friends. Thank you. As far as my presentation, a very brief one, is concerned, let me bring you to a different environment, namely to the sphere of geopolitics. And my main research objective is to make a general outline of Russia's future strategies in the Arctic region. But before I do that, let me briefly mention a lot of numerous stereotypes and numerous misperceptions of Russian Arctic policies. Stereotype or misperception number one, that Russia is an expansionist, a revisionist state that aims at controlling the whole natural resources of the Arctic region. And as evidence, people, they mention things like the flag planting, Russian flag planting in 2007, or Moscow's claims on the Lomonosov and Mendeleev regions. But people tend to forget that pretty the same things are done by the other Arctic countries. Almost each of them, they have territorial claims. Canada and Denmark, they periodically plant their national flags on the tiny Hans Island and competing between them with a tiny island. For what reasons, I don't know. Stereotype number two is that Russia, being backward technologically and economically, relies on military instruments, and for that reason is tending to be a militarist power. And as evidence, people tend to bring facts such as the resumption of air and maritime space patrol in the Arctic and the North Atlantic, modernization of Russian armed forces and navy in the high north, revamping the border guard system along the Arctic Ocean's coastline, things like that. Also, a lot of stereotypes concerning the energy sector. Some Western experts, they tend to present Russia as the future world energy hegemon because of possessing huge natural resources in the Arctic region. On the contrary, there's a completely different stereotype that states that Russia is a colossus with feet of clay because the Arctic natural resources are overestimated. There is no geological evidence to the date that they are that huge as normally described. Plus the so-called American shale gas revolution, which according to some Western experts can bring down the Russian gas industry in general. But on the other hand, there's a lot of evidence that it might be a bluff. Really no gas shale revolution is going on. Maybe it's can be different applications. But let me move on and to outline the real Russia's priorities for the future Arctic policy, and I try to identify at least three major drivers of Russian future Arctic strategy, such as climate change, then making the Arctic Russia's strategic resource basis, which is foreseen by both Russian Arctic doctrines of 2008 and the quite recent one, 2013, and also the need to develop in a sustainable way the Russian Arctic zone. These are real priorities. These are things about which Russia is really concerned. And it's not mythology, not stereotype. It's a strategy which is designed for decades. As far as the climate change is concerned, the implications of climate change, they provide both opportunities and challenges. Among the opportunities, I should mention things like increased accessibility to the Arctic natural resources and sea routes. And among the challenges, I have to mention, first of all, environmental implications, unpredictable changes in flora and fauna, habitat, also threats to traditional economies of indigenous people, and also, of course, a potential increase in international competition over the Arctic natural resources and sea routes. not only the coastal states can be involved in that kind of competition, but also there are some signs that non-Arctic states located in completely different regions of planet, they also can take part in that kind of competition. The second priority, or the second driver of Russia's strategic approaches to the Arctic is making it a strategic resource basis. Also provides both opportunities and challenges. Among the opportunities, I would mention the good prospects for the Russian oil and gas industry, regardless that the gloomy predictions of some Western experts on that. And also not only gas and oil industries, but also mining. A lot of quite promising mining projects in the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. Also, the Northern Sea route development as both domestic and international trade route. And also circumpolar air traffic is quite a promising area where international cooperation develops quite dynamically. And also the Arctic tourism, which is booming over the last several years. Of course, among challenges I have to mention, first of all, unclear perspectives for the offshore oil and gas industries. I mean, first of all, the lack of safe and green, environmentally clean technologies for that. No problem with the onshore drilling and extraction. I mean, of course, there are problems, but they are minor compared to the offshore extraction of gas and oil. The potential dangerous environmental consequences, such as oil spills, air, water, terrestrial pollution, as a result of increased economic activities in the higher north. And of course, problematic implications for the indigenous people, for their culture and traditional economies. Finally, the last but not least driver is the need for sustainable development of the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. Also, there are some opportunities and challenges. Among the opportunities, let me mention the growth of Russian domestic and foreign investment to the regional economy. Also, the federal government is cognizant of numerous challenges to the traditional economies and indigenous people, and there are some federal programs on that. And plus, also, the Russian government tends to invest money to numerous environmental programs. And quite recently, Putin launched a new initiative, Clean the Arctic, starting from the cleaning the some of the archipelagos in the high north. Among the challenges, I would say that the main challenge is that the Russian government is unable to attract investments enough for solving the problems of the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation, and also to properly develop public-private cooperation in this area. Unfortunately, some of the Russian businesses, they are still too greedy to invest money and to be socially responsible, to have a forward-looking strategy for development of this zone. And they're thinking of profits only, not about the future of the region. And the general conclusion is that in the foreseeable future, Russia's strategy in the region will be quite predictable and pragmatic, rather than revisionist and spontaneous. On the one hand, such strategy aims at protecting Russia's legitimate economic interest in the region, and on the other hand, Moscow is open to cooperation with foreign partners that are willing to partake in exploiting the Arctic natural resources and sea routes. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think you may want to ask something more questions, please. Okay, me here.
Could you say a little bit more about how you see the development of the Northern Sea route affecting the further development of Siberia? Not concerned about international traffic, but the implications for opening up, perhaps using the big rivers for eastern Siberia.
Yeah, you're right. Some experts, they tend to forget about the domestic importance of the Northern Sea route. Actually, it goes from the Soviet time, when the Northern Sea route was the main source of supplies to the higher northern regions of Russia. Maybe one of the few opportunities to provide them with fuel, food stuff, with everything actually. And in the 90s, the whole infrastructure that was created in the Soviet time was destroyed, or completely, or almost completely destroyed. So now the Russian federal program for development of the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation, it has a lot of federal task programs to develop, to restore and further develop this infrastructure. And of course, I would say that 2/3 of Russian interest is concerning using the Northern Sea route for domestic purposes rather than for international trade. And huge companies like Lukoil, like other Rosneft, Transneft, they have a lot of projects over there. And of course, they have to ship all these goods and natural resources, energy products via this northern sea. So it is very important project.
You have mentioned here the role of the indigenous peoples in this way that their culture can be disturbed by commercial activities. I would, however, ask you what is the positive role of the indigenous peoples for the Arctic strategy of Russia? How they are seen as a constructive factor in the Arctic development in Russia? Thank you.
Well, it's quite a difficult question because, I mean, frankly, none of the Arctic countries has 100% proper or efficient policies on the indigenous people. Even here in Finland, I heard a lot of complaints from the indigenous people from Sami about the policies of the national authorities or local authorities, especially of the European Union. But in case of Russia, we also have a lot of problems in the relationship between the government and the NGOs, especially the leading one, RIPON. Last year we had a very complicated and very unpleasant conflict between RIPON and the Russian Ministry of Justice. The Ministry of Justice deprived the indigenous people from the license to continue their activities, and they forced them to be re-registered in accordance with the new rules. But even in that negative way, complaining, attracting public attention to the local peoples, in other ways, the Russian indigenous people, they encourage the federal authorities, the regional authorities, to invest more money, to invest more efforts to solve numerous problems related to indigenous people's communities. So, I mean, the dialogue is too far from an ideal in that sense. But, I mean, some optimistic signs they are still there.
Thank you very much.